Ex-police officer here. This is a call that made me decide that law enforcement just wasn't for me. I conducted a no-knock search warrant on a drug house. First officer through the door secures the suspect closest to the door. Second officer secures the person second closest to the door, etc. I was the fourth officer in, and of course, my suspect ran. I chased him down the hallway, and he runs into a room and slams the door. I burst in right after, jump on top of him, and get him secured. Before I cuffed him, he had his hand under the bed. I took him to the living room where the other suspects were being held. Go back to the room and look under the bed. Turns out what he was reaching for was a double-barrel, sawed-off shotgun. My heart sank. I took a few photos for evidence and collected the gun. Opened the barrels and found that it was loaded with 2 slugs. I'm not sure he would have shot me had he gotten a hold of it, but it was enough to keep me up for 2 nights. I resigned 3 weeks later. I once responded to a call for a subject shooting a shotgun in his house. When I arrive, his mother runs out screaming, He's in the room, he's in the room. I have her wait by my car. Me and another officer enter the house. I'm the point man. We make our way to his bedroom and I turn the corner. He's just sitting in a chair with a shotgun and stares at me. He casually greets me. I had dealt with him before from a past arrest. I attempt to talk to him and try to keep him calm. After about a minute, he just says, none of this matters, man. Thanks for trying, though. And then puts a shotgun in his mouth and shoots himself in the head. He obviously didn't survive. The event still haunts me, but I've handled this as well as I could, and I'm still a police officer. My grandfather was a police officer for 40 plus years. They recently told me a story about getting a call from a neighbor saying that they hadn't seen their own neighbor, let's call him Bill, for a few days. My grandfather and another cop, John, show up at Bill's house. They knock and knock, but there's no answer. They check the doors, and lo and behold, one is unlocked. So, as they enter the house, my grandfather starts calling out, Mr. Bill, are you home? Is everything all right? This goes on for a while as they search the house. Finally, Officer John goes down the steps to the basement. My grandfather hears him say, Oh, Mr. Bill, there you are. Is everything all right? My grandfather goes down the steps to see Mr. Bill standing in the basement in his suit, complete with his hat and one thing that is very, very off. My grandfather goes, John, I think Bill's dead. Dumbfounded, Officer John says, He's standing right there. What are you talking about? And you don't see the rope around his neck? So, apparently, Bill had hung himself with clothing line rope, tied it to the beam in his basement, and kicked away the stool he was standing on. Over the however many days it had been, the rope had stretched so much that Bill just looked like he was standing in the dark. Out of all the stories I've heard so far, that was the saddest. Funniest, granted, because of Officer John's confusion, but the darkest story I've heard my grandfather tell. I was working an off-duty job at a local theme park. It was an overnight shift, so the park was completely closed with no one around besides the occasional cleaner or painter. I usually just sit in my patrol car on my laptop, but when I get sleepy or need to stretch my legs, I get out and go for a walk around the empty park. Let me tell you, amusement parks are really fucking creepy when they're empty at night, but I got used to it. On this particular night, I was doing my normal walk, on my phone, probably on Twitter, when I look up and see a lady who appeared to be in her 60s, nonchalantly sitting at the table in one of the restaurants that was closed. Like, just sitting there in the dark. This really confused the hell out of me, and she was not dressed like an employee. I tapped on the window, and she turned her head and just stared straight at me. I asked loudly what she was doing, and she just turned her head back away from me and ignored me. I tried to open the door, but it was locked. I called on the radio for park security to come over there and confirm if this lady was supposed to be there while I walked back to my car to get a set of keys I kept in there. As I walked back to the front of the restaurant, Two security guards are walking up at the same time as me. One of them peers in the window and asks, "Somebody was in here?" I look and the lady is nowhere to be seen. We get it open and search every crevice of the place, but there was not a soul in there. You can say I was a little freaked out, but we went back and checked the exterior cameras and nobody had ever entered or exited the building. To this day, that experience creeps me out and I still can't explain it. I responded to a single vehicle crash out in the country. When I found the car, it had left the road, crashed through a fence, rolled at least 3 times, and came to a rest right side up. The driver was mangled pretty bad. The actual paramedic says that he's deceased. So naturally, we secure the scene and wait for the coroner. When the coroner gets there, he declares him dead. Starts his investigation/documentation. About 20 minutes into it, we are all near the coroner's van discussing the situation. We're about 20 feet from the victim's car when the driver, who hadn't been removed yet, sits up, looks around, and starts the car. We all jumped about 5 feet straight into the air. The driver had survived. There ended up being loads of investigation into how 2 trained professionals declared a live man dead. I had a dude OD on heroin while trying to get something from his bedside table. He collapsed into it and choked to death with his head on top of the drawer because he couldn't move. The best he could do was kind of hug the table. So in the morning, his mom comes in, sees him, drags him off, and puts him on the floor before calling 000. He was left exactly how he died. We arrived, and he is on his back with all of his limbs up like a dead bug. Kind of like a crawling position, but on his back. His face and neck were red, but his throat had a white line where the drawer was resting to choke him. At a glance, it looked like his throat was sliced because of the color difference. It wasn't scary so much, it just looked bizarre and isn't what you'd expect at 7 a.m. I don't think I'll ever forget the sound of the undertaker straightening out the rigor mortis joints. This older lady had called in because her husband went outside to cut wood and didn't come back for lunch. He was recently diagnosed with a terminal illness. Anyways, we end up locating him in his barn, hanging by the neck from a rafter. The other deputy had been on the job a while and seen most all. I, on the other hand, was new and hadn't seen shit. He'd been hanging there for a while because his neck was stretched out and his feet and ankles were filled with blood. He tells me to grab his thighs while he cuts the rope. Once the rope was cut, the old guy just flopped over my shoulder, which forced all of the air out of his lungs through his throat. I can't really describe it, but it was like the loudest and longest moan I've ever heard. I screamed and dropped him. I felt bad for both. I'm not a cop, but I'm rather a former EMT. I worked night shifts, and this was either the night before or night of Halloween. We get a call to BFE for generalized pain, which is a giant red flag for us because that could range from "I hurt my finger" to "I just got shot and I'm dying and I don't want the cops to come." Now, since this is a night shift, we get this call around 3 a.m., I would say. So we get there, and it's a creepy old lady who gets us to come in the house with her through her garage. Why? Because she has a TV blocking the front door out of fear of zombies or something showing up to rob her. Weird, right? Well, this garage was pitch black. We asked her to turn on the light and she wouldn't do it because squirrels chewed up the wires. So my partner and I kind of gave a weird look to each other, but didn't think much of it since we thought it was some Halloween thing. So we go inside and there is a single mattress on the floor. No other furniture besides the TV blocking the front door. The patient is the crazy lady's daughter. She's got chronic pain, so it's NBD. We get her to the truck and something seems off with the crazy lady. so I automatically closed the door to the truck, leaving the medic and patient in there, since he's much bigger than me and can handle himself and a patient already strapped to the stretcher. So I'm outside the truck, and crazy old lady is standing there with her arm in a sling that she had just put on. I asked her to leave so I could go to the hospital. She tries to hand me a Diet Coke for her daughter, and I refuse for obvious reasons. This set her off. She throws the Coke and runs off towards her house, but only a few feet before she turns back around and starts coming at me. I see something in her hand. She had pulled out a knife. My paramedic then opens the door to tell me he's ready to go, and it startles the lady enough for me to be like, "Alright, let's go," and off we went to the hospital. After that shift, I went home and cried. This was the first time I was almost killed on duty, and it was at 3 a.m. on Halloween night. So my uncle was a police officer in Los Angeles. He was attending a road traffic accident where a car had been racing around a corner too quickly, had gone off the road and gotten stuck between some kind of cement blocks. The car was completely vertical, the driver facing down to the ground and the trunk of the car facing up to the sky. The guy was relatively coherent, but was trapped in the car because the front of the car was crushed and his legs were stuck in the footwell. The car ended up setting on fire before they were able to get him out, and he was basically burned alive. When they finally put out the fire, all that was left of the guy were bones, apart of course from his fleshy legs that were still preserved in the footwell. So this one time, I was chasing a burglary suspect and he ran into a farmer's market, which also happened to be a homeless camp. I knelt down to look for him and stuck my knee completely in a pile of human feces. It soaked through my pants. As soon as we found the guy, I rushed back to the station and tried to wash it as thoroughly as I could with antibacterial soap. But still. Hey guys, it's Gotea here. I wanted to thank you all very much for listening to this very scary and very creepy, very disgusting story that our first responders have the pleasure of having almost every day, in fact. Additionally, please try and show some restraint in the comment sections. These people go through hell on a daily basis, and we just want to have respect for them here. So, if you have any stories of your own, please send them to me via my personal email, again, which will be linked in the description below, and I will be sure to include that in one of my videos. But thank you guys so much. Stay safe out there. It's starting to get a little bit hectic, so if we all just keep our sanity and band together, we'll make it through this. So love you guys. Thank you so much, and I will see you mates in the next episode.